What's up, everybody? This is your boy Reggie Casual from thecasual.co, and we're snatching this one. This is a blast from the past. This is Western versus Japanese streetwear, Japanese versus Western streetwear part 2 in HD, more nuance and with visual aid, because pictures are great. You gotta have pictures. You can't just talk about this stuff. So let's go. All right, so first off, let me begin by saying that I am not claiming that one is better than the other. I'm leaving that up to you. However, I am in Camp Japan for reasons I'll outline a little bit later, but I will be objective as possible about this, and hopefully my admitted bias doesn't shine through. And if it does, call me out. You can say something, but we'll touch on the differences of approach, the market, and the process, which hopefully gives you a clear understanding of what are some of the contrasts between the two. And then you decide for yourself. Don't rely on me. Who cares what I think? I'm just gonna tell you about it. And then I'm going to tell you why I like it. As any self-proclaimed fashion enthusiast will tell you, the West is rife with trends. There's no secret about that. They come and go like the tides and are usually promoted by those with celebrity status. And due to the West's strong affinity to celebrity culture, this makes sense, as celebrities act as conduits and influencers that catapult these trends to the masses. Just look at the forays of Rihanna, Pharrell, and of course Kanye West, and that new girl, that Kylie girl. I don't follow, I don't care. But yeah, these individuals have so much star power that when they wear something, it immediately becomes a trend, especially in the case of Mr. West, who seems to be able to create seismic shifts in all of street fashion if he co-signs any style. However, Japan does not have this luxury. I mean, sure, there are celebrities, but almost every young person in Japan knows who Rihanna is, Pharrell, or of course they know Kanye West unless they live under Mount freaking Fuji, and that's impossible because you can't live under Mount Fuji. But name me one Japanese celebrity that has this kind of star power that affects trends almost globally. Don't worry, I'll wait. Here, I'll even give you a hint. It starts with no. One. All right, yeah. There's not a single Japanese entertainer that promotes trends to the extent of celebrities in the West, which is why Japan may not be devoid of trends, but it's just a bit more nuanced. One could say street fashion in the West is a bit standard across the board. Many brands do the same thing or follow the same trends, while in Japan, street fashion deviates from brand to brand. And let's not forget that Japan has an incredibly deep history of traditional garments that many brands in Japan take influence from. Wide pants, elongated shirts, and collarless jackets have always been in Japan, while the West is just now starting to catch on to these silhouettes. However, the biggest criticism of Japanese brands is that to the savvy fashion head, they come off as a bit gimmicky. Quite often, they overstay their welcome with egregious price points, and they never really grow into anything else besides the initial concept. However, in Japan, experimentation is definitely more celebrated. In the West, sure, yeah, you can experiment, but only to an extent, because looking good, and most importantly, familiar, is highly regarded in the West as fashionable. You know, because if you wear the same thing as everybody else, you are definitely going to stand out. That's sarcasm, because you're not. And while the main goal of brands in the West is exposure, not all the time, but most of the time it's exposure, the main goal of a brand in Japan is to set itself apart, garnering support of its direct demographic a la niche targeting. Now, they do this by crafting a story or a principle around the clothing that often speaks to a very small subset of society. You know, the old-fashioned model before social media got a hold of it. And this is why so many brands in Japan charge a higher premium. Not only are they selling clothes, but a very specific lifestyle. Now, all of this goes into the crafting of the brand to the finest detail, a process the Japanese call monozukuri. This philosophy of monozukuri, literally making things, and more succinctly, craftsmanship, has put some Japanese brands on equal footing to classic American brands, much to the chagrin of the all-American fashion enthusiasts. Now, some even scream that Japan appropriates American culture. Fancy that. Japan is appropriating American culture. I think we need more kanji t-shirts and streetwear brands, right? Come on. But I mean, this is a country where you can find a pristine pair of 1950s Levi's, so it's either love or appropriation. That's really dependent on the person. But it should be noted that Japan's love of quality craftsmanship has led American brands like Levi, Champion, and Lee Jeans to thrive by making higher quality alternates exclusively in Japan. And Japan's Americana-inspired brands, no slouch. Native American jewelry maker Goros, who learned how to make silver feathers from Native Americans, or Neighborhood, Hysteric Glamour, Non-Native, Lab Musician, Blue Japan, Visvim, Glam Capital, and a slew of others are doing great things in the genre. But it all comes down to money, right? Because you know, in the West, you gotta have that money. I mean, you gotta make that cash, and you gotta have that cash if you're gonna make sure that your brand grows. However, in Japan, growth is, of course, it's important, but for many brands, maintaining their presence and message takes precedence. Now, only the really big brands do the capitalistic approach. The Undercovers, the CDGs, Mastermind, anything with Hiroshi Fujiwara, and Bape, of course. Now, these take the serious capitalistic approach, mainly because they can. But even with that, most brands are perfectly fine in their lane and prefer to be outliers, and some even forgo having online shops in 2017. Crazy, right? Now, the biggest street fashion retailer in Asia, a bathing ape, commonly referred to as Bape, created by famed designer Nigo, is one of the few Japanese brands that takes the Western sales approach directly. By design, it was created that way. You ever wonder why Nigo sold Bape? It was his intention in the first place, which I'll cover in another vid. But by attaching the brand to famous Western celebrities, Bape became a household name. And this is a model that Bape still uses today. But again, the Bape model is actually the Western model, and you'll be hard pressed to find someone involved in street fashion who doesn't know about Bape. And most Japanese brands are just not used to this model, and as a result, they place a heavy emphasis on garment creation and principle. And because in Japan, being a famous designer is far more lauded than being a famous celebrity. You know, in Japan, celebrities have a shelf life and are usually dominated by the agencies they are beholden to. However, designers, marketers, and businessmen are lauded as the real celebs, as they create opportunity and commerce. Case in point, people outside of fashion in Japan know exactly who Nigo is, despite him moving on from Bape years ago. And everything Hiroshi Fujiwara just turns to gold simply because he's Fuji. These lifelong designers are more celebrated by business people and designers alike, because in Japan, being famous isn't enough. Being respected is far more important. You gotta have that sama after your name. You gotta be like Fujiwara sama. You gotta be like Nigo sama. You can't just be regular san. You gotta be a sama. I'm trying to be a sama. I'm trying to be Reiji Kajuaru sama. That's what I'm trying to be. But that's what you want to be in Japan, a sama. However, in the West, particularly in the US, this is the opposite. Not in every case, but in most cases, as even famous designers scramble to put famous people in their collections. And while it's a nice cohesion of both worlds, celebrity and fashion, most street fashion designers have to get famous people in their collections or they will fall flat as a result of social media. In Japan, though, being Rei Kawakubo's intern can garner you respect and acclaim, which is pretty dope. Now me, I prefer Japanese fashion. There is no secret there. I live in Tokyo. Part of the reason for me coming to Japan was for fashion. But it's also because the West places so much emphasis on being cool and familiar, and I personally found it hard to experiment because of the derivative nature of the brands. When a trend sets in, it sets in until the next celebrity co-signs something else. Case in point, why do you wear Ultra Boost or distressed denim? Be honest. I mean, you know why, but you don't care. You don't care because now you like them, and that's okay. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I just feel uncomfortable dressing like everybody else, which is the reason I steer clear from logo street brands. And that's not to say that Japan doesn't have these trends. It's just that there's more to work with, and as a result, you're much more free to experiment. And this is quite surprising in a country that is impressively conservative in most areas of regular life. While most Japanese can be pretty stiff, the Japanese that are involved in the arts and in fashion are uniquely brave in their approach, and as a result, I learn about new brands, new pieces, new styles literally every day. That's not a joke. Even compared to stalwarts like New York, Paris, and London, Japan is in a league of its own. Not because it's better, but because it has a very different culture. You just see different things. And it's that makes Japan unique. But admittedly, if you live here for a while, it can wear thin. Now, if you are a fan of street fashion or fashion in general, Japan is a welcome outlier. But with so many quirky themes, it becomes a bit overwhelming. And some even view Japanese designers and brands as tryhards that are just doing different things for the sake of doing something different, which is a fair assessment. It's a fair criticism. I've seen a couple of brands that I'm just like, you just doing something crazy. That you shouldn't do that. And in my opinion, this is where Western street fashion may have Japanese street fashion beat. The best brands in the West highly reflect the groups that they target. There's a distinct connection between the clothes and the culture. While in Japan, you'll often see people wearing something that doesn't completely represent who they are. For the Japanese, it's often an aesthetic thing, and they're choosing that lifestyle's costume, so to speak. And while this does happen in the West, it's hard not to notice the culture that brands like Supreme, Stussy, Staple, Fear of God, all these brands, Diamond Supply Company, and a slew of others have cultivated. The only added benefit in Japan is that these brands are actually here, plus all the Japanese ones, which is a pretty good sell. It's a pretty big deal. But the real question is, who gets the title in your book? Japanese or Western street fashion? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and hit that thumbs up if you liked this space. Keep the convo going on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, you know what it is. Akai buttonを押してくださいませ. Push that red button and keep it casual. It's your boy. よろしくお願いします. And I'm out.